So I've already asked this question on multiple occasions, but I'm going to ask it again. What are you outside of what you consume? And what are you outside of your relationships to the world around you, outside of the relationships with the people and to the people, so your family, etc.? The reason why this is such an important question is because it is the understanding of ideology that we really gain when we honestly answer these questions. Because yes, we are more than what we consume, ideally. The way we relate to things, objects, and people outside of ourselves is what truly defines us. We are not defined by our desires. We're not defined by our whims and fancies. We're not defined by the labels that are imposed on us. What we're truly defined by is our relationship to the world outside of ourselves. And in the socialist societies, we're going to be defined by the more meaningful relationships that we will have access to, that we will gain access to. We will gain access to the fruits of our labor, and the way we will relate to them is going to change. It is not just the ownership that's going to change. I would argue that ownership is not going to be that big of a deal in the communist or even socialist societies. It is the way that we relate to other things and other people outside of ourselves, depending on our understanding of these concepts. Because when we create something and it doesn't belong to us, it is one thing. But when we don't understand the processes of creation, when we don't understand why something is done, when we really don't see the use of something being done, then we suffer from alienation. But the lack of alienation is something that, of course, the socialist and communist projects are going to aim for. The lack of alienation is not going to be achieved very quickly, and it's going to be a process of becoming. A process of becoming human requires us to understand our current relationship to each other, to the labor, to the products of our labor, etc. And we are very confused about all of these right now. Most of us are, because capitalism is not interested in learning the intricacies of the relationships between objects and people, between people amongst themselves, etc. Capitalism is not inherently evil or bad or creating some obstacles on purpose. It is simply not an instrument. Capitalism uses any kind of instruments for one and only goal of achieving profit. That's it. And because it spontaneously arose out of economic circumstances of feudalism and before that slavery, it inherited a lot of the contradictions of feudalism and slave ownership. So the relationship between people and objects and people and objects, etc., all of these relationships have not been fully discovered and people have not fully become. So socialism is going to be the next stage where we actually learn to define ourselves outside of the processes of labor, but inside of the processes of labor as well. And then the next stage, communism, is going to be when we learn to relate to each other, people, as subjects, because the labor relationships, they are, of course, providing a lot of opportunities for cooperation and for growth and development, but they're also limiting, because for every thesis, there is an antithesis. For every single contradiction, the solution or resolution of the said contradiction is going to bring with itself a new contradiction, a new problem that is going to require another process of becoming. So in this never-ending cycle of becoming, we will continuously redefine ourselves as humans, and we will continue redefining relationships amongst ourselves. We will redefine our relationship not only to labor and to the world outside of ourselves, but to our own relationships with ourselves. Like, how do I relate to myself outside of everything I do, everything I consume, etc., etc.? So when you realize the scale of this all, you really cannot but agree with Marx when he talked about how the human history has not even started yet. We as humans haven't even been able to truly express ourselves as a subject of history. We have kind of been an object of history more so, because we had allowed, quote unquote, but of course it had nothing to do with our will. We let the circumstances shape us. We were just kind of this little piece of driftwood, just drifting on the waves of history and letting the outside circumstances define us. And this is fine. It's fine to have a long prehistory, and consciousness is not something that arose immediately as soon as human species started to exist. So all of these processes in our limited perception, they take a long time. But on the scale of the universe, it really is not that long. So we've got to realize that redefining ourselves individually right now, that's kind of a futile thing. Of course, it is possible to change little minuscule things about ourselves, about our habits, about the way we relate to each other. But we've got to understand that this is just the beginning. This is the beginning before the beginning. It is the future generations that are going to build true socialism, and then the future generations that are going to build true communism. These are the people who will be gaining all of those higher stages of awareness, or whatever it may be, or higher stages of understanding, that's for sure. And we cannot even fathom. We can only get a glimpse. It is only a dream, a vision for us right now. But that does not mean we should not work very hard on trying to understand how we are going to be able to achieve, not only, of course, ideologically, first and foremost, economically, how we're going to gain further awareness and how we're going to learn to relate to ourselves, to the world outside of ourselves, and to our labor, of course, and to other people. Because right now, most of us are defined by such small, limited things. We are defined by the place of work. We are defined by our material possession and some kind of a symbolic status that is attached to owning certain material possessions. We are defined by very limited relationships that we're able to gain with other people. And all of these definitions, they're very flexible. Even now, even in the capitalist hellscape, where the ideological construct do not allow for imagination, do not allow for true freedom to be expressed, even now we see how flexible all of these categories are and how blurry the lines and the boundaries between them are. These blurry lines is where we should direct our attention to, because we have to go beyond the boundaries of capitalism. And of course, the material changes come first. We have to fight for the liberation of all people, for our ability to decide how and when and why our labor is allocated to certain projects. But we also simultaneously have to work on understanding those other categories, more abstract, more philosophical categories of the relationship between people, of the relationship between different phenomena and concepts as well. And this is why we all have to read theory. I'm going to once again include a list of the recommended works that usually are on the shorter side, because in order to understand the future, you have to understand the past. In order to understand the modern conditions, you have to understand the past conditions as well. And of course, none of us are going to be able to foresee exactly what's going to happen in the future, but we've got to learn, and we've got to learn, and we've got to redefine ourselves slowly, bit by bit, even though this is not going to make such a big difference right now and right here, but it is still going to matter. All of these little drops of us and our labor have to unite together in this one huge stream that is going to finish off capitalism once and for all, and that's going to start a new project, is going to give life to new plans, new types of people who are going to be able to further develop humankind and its consciousness. So let me know what you think. I hope you have a great day today. I'm going to post a new video on Patreon on Sunday, so do consider supporting me if you're able to. Always take care of yourself and your community first. Subscribe to me on all the other social medias, even though I don't do much there, and I'll talk to you sometime later.